Hi, everyone. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon here with my very dear friend and mentor, Dr. Donald Layman. And as we are approaching the holidays, we thought that we'd give you some strategies for avoiding holiday weight gain and kind of why you do it and what happens. So basically, Don, so I've known Don, just so you guys know, I've known Don for 20 years. I've never seen you put on weight over the holidays. Interesting that that's never happened. It's also interesting that in clinical practice, this is the time from Thanksgiving to when would you say Christmas?
I think anymore, it almost goes into Super Bowl season, but certainly past the New Year's.
Past the New Year's is the largest amount of weight gain, and those individuals spend the next year trying to lose the weight that they've put on, and the recidivism rate, which means the relapse rate, is incredibly high. I do happen to have those numbers. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. I want to say the recidivism rate or the relapse rate of weight gain is something like it's probably close to 90%.
Yeah, I think it's in that range. It has varied over the years some, but
Yeah.
it's the vast majority of people will gain it back within a year, which is, one of the reasons why I hate using the word diet, because people think of it as something that's short term, and it really is a lifetime commitment to what you're doing.
It is a lifetime commitment.
The holidays, like you're saying, is a challenge. And I mean, we used to do the clinical weight loss studies, as you know, and one of the challenges is how do you position them in the year? If you go from
Right.
Thanksgiving through Christmas during a weight loss study, chances are you're losing ground.
Yeah, and it's interesting because people try to lose that same, 10 pounds every year.
Yeah,
And what's interesting, especially as you age, what happens is you do that yo-yo dieting and you ultimately lose skeletal muscle. And
yeah,
that becomes much more detrimental, especially as you age.
yeah.
So
So for
yeah,
me,
go ahead.
I think the issue is how do we develop strategies for ourselves? And I know you commented that I don't gain a lot of weight over the holidays, and I think the fact is that I kind of treat the holidays as individual days, and I think where most people get into trouble is they treat it as a 6 or 8 week snacking period.
Yeah. And so I think that you're exactly right. So the first tip that I'd recommend that everybody do is really define what that meal is going to be. So if you're going to have Thanksgiving dinner or whatever you're having, that becomes your meal. It's not it's interesting when you think about the holidays and you think about what the things that you're grateful for. One of the things that an individual should always be grateful for is their health.
Yeah,
And if you do things that are counterproductive to your health and you do it continuously, repetitive behaviors
yeah,
become habits, and
yeah.
habits really determine the trajectory of how you age and what your health looks like. So, tip number one is really define what that meal looks like. And I also believe you shouldn't really be overeating, even if it's a Thanksgiving dinner. Why should you eat till you're sick?
Yeah. I mean, I think that aspect of defining the meal for each individual is really important. And I think that's one of the strategies I've developed is that, I have 2 or 3 things in Thanksgiving food that I really like. And I don't,
Everybody wants to know what those are.
oh,
I mean,
well,
come on.
for me, number one thing that is traditional family thing for me is the turkey dressing. I am not a huge carb eater, but turkey dressing is Thanksgiving for me.
Okay.
And so, I'll look at, I've had family gatherings where there might be 20 dishes sitting on the table and 10 more desserts. And, I decide on, what is that 1 or 2 dishes that I want to have, and everything else, I might not touch it, or at the very least, I have very small tastes of it. I think portion control,
Yeah.
enjoy what you like, but try and maintain portion control. And you really don't need seconds and thirds.
Right. I think that that's absolutely true. So the first thing that we said is really define your meal, and you know, uh, I do believe that you can add a quote cheat meal in, and if you want to have all the things that you want, there is a component of portion control. And I think that Don and I really have that same first tip. It is about number one, setting up the time, right?
Yeah.
And then number two, the
Yeah.
amount in which you're going to consume.
Yeah, I mean, on a regular, monthly basis, I would not consume pie, but on a Thanksgiving, I'm probably going to eat a pecan pie piece. It just sort of, it's to
Yeah.
me, it's part of the tradition.
And here's something else that this is a little going to be off topic for a lot of people that what we normally talk about, but know your triggers. And this comes to the emotional behavioral aspects of feeding. You must know your triggers. And what I mean by triggers is individuals that have any kind of binge eating disorder or eating disorder or stress eat. I take care of a lot of patients in my practice who have emotional eating challenges. So if you know that you are going to be triggered by certain foods, it's much easier to overconsume carbohydrates. In fact, they've designed many, many foods that are like that, highly palatable.
Yeah.
The other thing is if you are going to be with family, I don't know because of these times, but oftentimes family is very triggering. So let's say you've gotten rid of an old habit of overeating and emotional eating, and you go back into an environment that can be very toxic to you, you have to prepare for that prior to engaging in it.
Yeah. And
So,
one of the things we touched on early, I mean, the statistics are the average calorie consumption on Thanksgiving Day is like 4,500 calories. I mean, it's more than twice of what most people eat.
sounds
But
like what I eat in a day. Just kidding.
yeah, that's probably what I eat in a week. but for me, from what I have seen in people, I think the bigger risk is the season risk, that people sort of begin on Thanksgiving overeating and then they oversnack and overeat and indulge and party through the first of the year. So we've got a 6-week period, and that's where the 10 or 15 pounds comes from. It's not from that one day. The,
Right.
the reality is there's a lot of data that overeating on a single day, we're not very efficient with it.
So let's
You,
talk about that. So let's talk about efficiency.
yeah, there's a great paper back 1990 by an individual by the name of Claude Bouchard from Canada. And they did a great study where they took a series of twins. I think they had 12 twins, and they overfed them 1,000 calories per day for over 3 months. They had they had something like well, it was over 3 months. The average weight gain, if they just were efficient, they should have gained 24 pounds over that period of time. But
Hmm.
what they found was that the average weight gain for the group was only like 17,
Hmm.
and the range went from like 9 to 29. So there were some people who overate 1,000 calories per day and gained very little, and there
Okay.
were other people who gained more than even predicted. and
So that's interesting. And you guys, we will link the paper below. If you like it, we'll link it. You guys can take a read.
It's a great study. There's a lot of messages in it. First one is that, like I said, they had 12 twins, and what they found was that the twins almost all gained the same weight,
Okay.
but between the groups, it was vastly different. And
So that's interesting.
so basically, the anthropomology, the body composition type of a twin, meant that they ultimately had about the same efficiency, which I think is really interesting. So that's sort of a genetic link to gain. And the second thing they found was that the people who gained the most fat were the ones who gained the most pounds.
Got
So
it.
the people who had the highest efficiency ultimately laid down more fat. And the people who gained the most lean
Mm.
laid down the least fat. I thought that was an interesting comparison of it.
So that is interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the efficiency as it relates to people that,
Yeah,
the non-twin studies. So they're the people that are going to be eating, because
yeah,
everybody talks about calories in, calories out.
sure. And it's not, it's nowhere near that simple. It's, I mean, we always use a number like 3,500 calories equals a pound of weight change,
Mhm.
but that that is just kind of a ballpark, which is, as the Claude Bouchard study shows, kind of applies to no one. It's just
Right.
kind of a benchmark. And the efficiency relates, first of all, let's think about a single meal like Thanksgiving. The
Mhm.
reality is, if you overeat for a single meal, the body metabolism just isn't very efficient with that. And
Right. And
change,
what he says by efficient he means that if you're overeating by that single meal, it doesn't mean that you're going to. So let's say you overeat by 3,500 calories in that one meal.
right.
You're probably not going to, although we talk about 3,500 calories equaling 1 pound, you're probably not going to put on that kind of, you're probably not going to put on a pound
A
because the
pound of
body,
fat.
a pound of fat because the body is inefficient.
You might put on 3 pounds for the next day, but it'll all be water.
It'll be water. And
It'll be a water change, and it'll go away the next day.
and I don't know if you remember this, Don, but many years ago, I would call you and say, "Oh my God, I had one cheat meal. Remember this?"
Yeah,
And you would actually tell me this exact thing. So for
yeah,
those of you guys don't know, I was involved in fitness and stuff for a long time, and I would call you and say, "Hey, man, I can't believe this, but I've put on 3 pounds." And
yeah,
you're right, and it wasn't fat. And then in a week
yeah.
or so, you lose it.
Yeah, so we're not very efficient. We kick in all sorts of thermogenic effects and uncoupling effects and things when we have a single meal that's different. But if
Right.
you do it for 6 weeks, the body will begin to store that as fat, no question about it. But even then, we
How
know
long do
that,
you think it takes, just out of curiosity, how long do you think it takes to actually begin to put on weight like that? How
you
often?
know, I, I think that if I was just going to put a number on it, I would say somewhere between 1 and 2 weeks. And
Okay.
I'd probably answer the question by going the other way. Uh, if you're trying to lose weight and you reduce your calorie intake, in the first week, you got a good chance of losing 4 or 5 pounds.
Okay.
But you get out 2 weeks, and now you're starting to get to see the real weight loss of what you're doing. And I think weight gain kind of would follow the same pattern.
Mm.
You get out, if you make a change, the impact of the real change you'll start seeing in 2 weeks.
Okay.
You've got a lot of transient things that'll go on for a week to 10 days, 2 weeks. 2 weeks out, now you're really seeing what the difference is.
So that's interesting. So also what you're saying is that some people gain weight at different rates, that even though carbohydrates have 4 grams, 4 calories per 1 gram, the efficiency in which an individual uses that is all different.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about protein turnover, and I think that muscle protein turnover, protein synthesis is a big part of thermogenesis. And at your earlier point, calories, are calories, but they're not all equal. And your
Right.
earlier point, I would argue that people have a much bigger chance of overeating on my dressing or pecan pie than they do
Right.
on the turkey. The
Right.
protein is not something you're going to overeat, 4,000 calories on. It
So
just has too high a satiety effect.
So I think that really makes a lot of sense when we think about tips for how to avoid holiday weight gain. We think of number one, understanding it's only one day and really should be arguably one meal. And then number two is, let's say it's not one meal and you want to have pecan pie at one meal and maybe you want to have turkey meatloaf. I don't know if they make that. I don't really eat turkey meatloaf at one meal. That you can kind of go off your plan, but it needs to be portion controlled.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I try to take this holiday season, and it's there's a Thanksgiving and then there's a holiday, whatever religion holiday you pick. I try and make it 2 or possibly 3 events for me over the next 6 weeks, and not a 6 week continuous event. and
Right.
that and I think that allows the efficiency issue and body composition and everything to kind of come back into check.
And then the next question is, do you reduce calories and plan for that? Or do you just kind of assume that the efficiency is going to remain at what it has been and you don't compensate for the other days?
I don't a lot because I'm pretty good about not doing that other snacking in between.
Okay.
And I would say I probably compensate like the night before and the breakfast. My family traditionally had a Thanksgiving meal kind of mid-afternoon, like 3 o'clock. So I would have virtually nothing for breakfast. So, I would compensate for the calories a little bit. But frankly, my biggest compensation was that I didn't have all the desserts or all the cookies or things that a lot of people will experience in between, like from Thanksgiving till Christmas. I didn't do much extra snacking. I tried to go back to my normal lifestyle.
Yeah, so that's important, guys. And I'm going to give you one more tip. Make sure that you don't miss your exercise. So if you train, and Thursday is a training day, Friday is a training day, people will always find an excuse. So you either can find a way or you can find an excuse. So I think keeping, I'm scheduled, I'm still going to train on Thursday. I will train on Friday. I will take Sunday off. I will stick to my regular physical activity. The other thing that you can do is after you eat is get some exercise, even if it's just walking, even if it's just to stimulate muscle. We know skeletal muscle is one of the largest sites for glucose disposal. You could do a brisk walk. So anyway, if you
One
guys
other,
like
one
this,
other, one
yeah,
other tip that I would recommend to people, just in terms of feeling good, is be sure you keep your fluid intake high, keep your water intake high, and you'll find you just feel better and you'll understand your satiety better.
totally. Actually, I was just on a podcast with a guy named Tom Shea. He's a former SEAL, and we were talking about that as one of the tips. Don't allow hunger to be confused with thirst.
Yeah,
So, guys,
100%.
if you like this video, please like it, please share it, subscribe to the channel. I know that your time is very valuable. We really appreciate it. Drop a comment below, and I will do my best to get to everybody.